Okay, we're live. Hi, Heng.
Hi, morning, Chris.
Okay. Okay, I can hear a couple of things in the background, but it's okay. All right. So Hank, you want to introduce yourself? You're from Greenpeace. And I see on the website that you are a lead campaigner. Is that correct?
Oh yeah. First of all, I just to introduce my background. Okay, you can call me Hanks. I'm joined Greenpeace for a few years and currently a campaign lead for Greenpeace Southeast Asia, based in Kuala Lumpur.
Okay. So when it says lead campaign, is there no hierarchy? There are just various campaigns.
I would say like it's more on the combinations of the campaign because in Malaysia we have a few campaign that we are working on, such as the
Okay.
transport and then climate energies, and also like single use plastic campaign and other responsive campaign. So I'm the lead campaigner for all those campaign.
Okay. All right. So I thought what I would do is actually, because I've known you a long time, I actually knew when you first took your job at Greenpeace, right?
Yeah.
So I thought it'd be kind of interesting to spend our time just really going through our history. And in a way, we're actually going to just examine the history of environmental activism in Malaysia, you know?
Mm, okay.
So when I met you, was it 2012, maybe? You reached out to me, I remember. Were you the first Greenpeace employee?
Oh yeah. Because
You were the
yeah, for everyone's information, in Greenpeace, we set up our office in 2017. I think first time I met with Chris. I mean, I met you. I think in 2000 late 2014. Yeah, because
Oh,
2012.
really?
I think yeah, 2012. I was still in the college.
Oh, okay. So 2014 you met me. Okay.
14, 2015. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And you were I mean, I remember you were like the only guy on the team, right? In KL?
Yeah, yes, correct. Because that time I was doing the project in contractor, freelancer for Greenpeace Southeast Asia. So
Okay.
there was time to set up the office in Malaysia. And so I just started I accept the offer and then just starting some of the projects, set up the I think some seeding work and some social media channel in Malaysia office.
Right. I remember that you were basically just reaching out at that point. You were just trying to engage with any network that was related to environmental work, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think I mean I don't know how you found me, probably on our website online, and then you joined us for actually I think Joe Green's first event at my house.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I think I'll put some photos up about that because that so what was that 2015? It must be 2014, 2015, right? Yeah. So at that point in time, I remember you were telling me that were you going to Bangkok? Is that where the it's headquartered in Bangkok? Like you'd
Oh
go
yeah.
for meetings there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, because it was quite interesting because activism in Malaysia is a relatively new idea. In fact, I think they hired you because you actually were an activist before that. Were you one of the guys that were intense in Merdeka, in this Merdeka Square or Merdeka Padang or something?
Oh yeah, I think so. My background was most on the student activism. When I was
Right.
I take part more in the student activism. For
Yeah.
example, to highlight the privatizations of higher educations, the University College Act, and then I work with many student activists. And some of my activist friend now they joined politics. Some they work in the academic industry. Some they join media and there's some of them that join NGO. So everyone they play their own roles. And the moments I think when I was in during my my students time, I participated a lot of the NGOs activity, especially human rights, such as activity in Swaram, Amnesty, Pusat Komas, etc. Mostly are political and human rights related issue. And after that, I was told that there was some environmental activism, because environmental activism is also connected to human rights. So
Sure.
that time when I got these offers to started to get a project to work in Greenpeace, and then my role is also connecting the environmental issue to human right issue, because the
Sure.
moment we talk about environmental issue, we also have to link it to all these human right abuses, and all these are interrelated.
Sure.
That's
Sure.
how I yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because I mean, so you were actually unusual. We weren't really used to seeing students being so strongly activist. It was actually quite brave. It was like post birthday, people were starting to get a little bit braver about speaking up, and so maybe that's how Greenpeace kind of found you. You may have come onto their algorithm because you were more visible. Because people were actually quite scared to protest, right?
I remember, so I think 10 years ago, I think during the
Yeah,
Versailles 2, Versailles 3 time, protesting, of course, opposing, governments, even like opposing a corrupt government is also a taboo. Like, people
yeah,
are up to voice it, although this is correct. And the thing that is a bit different with what happened nowadays. That's why even like when Greenpeace, my manager that time who saying that they want to recruit people and activists is also not easy, because not many people wanted to take a risk, because if you are arrested, you will be,
sure,
if
sure,
yeah, well,
yeah,
that's these are also part of the risk. So that time when I
yeah.
just finished study, so I just tell myself that just give it a try. Yeah. So
Yeah,
then
I,
10 years.
I actually remember that time because I remember, like I was sort of looking at you and thinking, I because activism was tended to be over politicized in a way, which is not necessarily the right way for activism should be independent. It's like, human rights and stuff like that. But what we were seeing there was actually, we were seeing a lot of the opposition politics talking about being the voice for human rights or being the voice for that. And I found that many of the other activists tended to be a little bit partisan. They were definitely more opposition leaning. So I actually saw you learn. I over a few years, I saw you go to. I think because you were interacting with more international activists, I think you were starting to behave a bit differently from some of the other activists I was seeing here. You were definitely more, you had to be non-corporate, non-political. Human rights is actually in its own lane, right? Would you say that's true? Were you learning because of your exposure to more international activists?
Yeah, it's depending on organizations, because for our informations, Greenpeace is an independent campaigning organizations.
Yeah,
These organizations cannot get funding from government, corporation, or political
sure,
party. Because of that, sometimes Greenpeace is very vocal and also outspoken in certain issue, and
sure,
also
sure,
sometimes the government or corporations they hate Greenpeace. They always label Greenpeace as an
sure,
eco-terrorist, like confrontational, and that's
sure,
also have to accept that not everyone likes eco-terrorist. I would say, like, not everyone likes protest. Not everyone like confrontational stuff. So the reason we protest, because we protest for something good, for environmental issue. So the moment we do go out there, bear witness, tell the world the environmental destruction, we also have
yeah,
to always behave as a bad cops. The moment we behave as a bad cop, we also put the big polluter under the spotlight. The moment we
sure.
put bad polluter under the spotlight, we also confront them, also make them unhappy. So that is the conflict happen. But the moment we expose the conflict, we have conflict, we also offer the solution. That is the solutions that we would like to promote if we engage
So,
with all the stakeholders together.
so I just want to compare actually, like I see what you do nowadays compared to then. So then, you started with protest and you're actually navigating this. And then now, 10 years later, I see you're writing opinion pieces.
Mm.
Uh, so you're actually more, you're not protesting, you're communicating, you're actually just raising a conversation around some specific subjects. So it's a study. So we definitely matured, as in this sort of environmental lane. There's definitely a maturity because I see you write think pieces now that might get published in like in a media, or it's published on Greenpeace. So like recently, I read a piece that you wrote about how uh, Hayes is coming back, which is interesting because it's sort of slipped from our consciousness. Because when I first met you, Hayes was a big deal. I mean, we were really directly affected by it. We were actually, it was difficult to breathe, and then now, 10 years later, we have not seen really serious like an environmental issue that's affecting us, but it is still there. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yep. I think if since you mentioned about the transboundary haze issue, I just want to highlight what is the key challenges or what is the progress. Because if we look at that, haze happened for more than 20 years, 20, more yeah,
Sure.
more than 20 years, and then and it's a complicated issue that involved the cross border. I mean, in Southeast Asia, because it's mostly caused by the peat fire and caused by
Sure.
the drift of the peatland. When peatland become dry, it easily get fire, and at the same time all this land has been drained from the plantations sector. And so the way that we want to highlight that the way we do our campaign, we also want to pressure the big polluter, the businesses who are profiting from this process. They have to clean up their supply chain. So
Sure.
I take example, there is people might think that okay, tackling all this environmental destruction is a bit hard and it's really not easy to see the progress. But I can tell you that we actually have a lot of good news. For example, I take example. In 2017, we managed to convince the global bank HSBC to stop funding forest
Okay.
destruction.
Okay. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
If you look at their HSBC, the global the funding policy, now they
Yeah.
have a policy that they cannot provide loans or the money to the company that involved in forest destruction and also causing forest fire. And imagine if HSBC is a global bank making commitment, they can also influence their supply chain. And because of
Right.
that, one of the biggest Malaysian palm oil giant like IOI, they used to also cause forest destruction in West Kalimantan, in Ketapang, Indonesia. And because of that, and in order to get funding loan from HSBC, IOI
Mm.
also policy. What I can wanted to highlight is that plantation sectors such as IOI and banker like HSBC, they're used to involve in all this destruction, but because of the global commitment, global pressure by the peoples, the customer, they also making the company to make a change. If HSBC can make a positive change, IOI can make a
So,
positive change, then
so
we
the
can also.
transparency has changed. Look, they're much more visible now, right?
But we need to do more. There are still many
Okay.
other companies are still doing it. Yeah, we need to do more.
So just to compare that, because you and I do different work, although it's in the same sphere. So while you are directing your attention to corporations and the actual problem, my work was actually, you know, actually the average person isn't making the connection that the snacks they're eating is contributing to the problem. You know what I mean? And that was my lane. That was my thing about actually saying, that's the problem with palm oil. It's so prevalent now. Like you go to a 7-Eleven, everything is in a packet. It's fried in palm oil. It's wrapped in plastic. That is the problem that there's no point fixing the corporations if the end user is still demanding it.
Mm.
So,
I was told that if we look at the global environmental destructions, I would say
yeah,
that I think of our finding and research, the reports that we have published many years ago, we can say that most of the global emissions, the global destruction are caused by the top 100 richest company and also top
right.
big company, the country. So meaning that of course all of us, including like we are human, as long as we consume something, we buy something, we all contributing to carbon emission, we also
Sure.
contribute to the waste. However, if we compare to the emissions or the pollution caused by the big company, it's actually nothing. And furthermore, sometimes the customer, the consumer, they were told to consume this kind of product and they were not given a choice to use alternative. So that's why one of the study I think that published by the Guardians also shows that the top biggest 100 company that cause more than two-thirds majority of the carbon emission, which means more than 80% of the global carbon emissions, the pollution are caused by the top 100 richest company. So if you want to tackle the pollution at the source, we have to make sure the top 100 company to make a change. Once they make a change, then we can also clean up the supply chain. For example, I take one that maybe I use a most extreme example. Okay, like burning rubbish. If me and you we burn rubbish, I mean outside immediately, the emissions that caused by us, of course, is not good. We are not encouraged you to do that. But the emissions that caused by us is nothing compared with the emissions, carbon emissions contributed by the big company every day, yeah, in the world. So if you want to change the tackle this environmental problem, we have to push for systemic change, especially ask the big company to clean up their supply chain. Then we can reduce
Yeah,
the
but
pollution.
but the thing is, supply responds to demand. So the demand is the demand also matters. That unless people are cutting back on their demand, those companies are still going to supply. So I just want to talk about that demand for one bit, because there was a kind of a silliness that happened when the Malaysian government pushed back against what they said was a Western Euro American narrative
Mhm.
about palm oil. Do you remember that?
Yep,
Was it Teresa Koch or something? I can't remember who it was.
yep.
And then she wanted to go on a tour to talk about the benefits of palm oil and the health benefits and stuff like that. What's happening about that? Has that?
I, yeah, if you look at because this is quite an interesting topic, especially when people think of forest fire, think of this forest destructions. Many people will think it's caused by the palm oil industry. If you look at that globally, um, palm oil industry because palm oil. Malaysia is the second palm oil exporter in the world. Because of that, I mean, palm oil indirectly also become the biggest driver for the deforestation in the region. Malaysia and Indonesia contributed the top two biggest palm oil exporter in the world. Whereas in Amazon, the soybean plantation, animal agriculture are the main driver for deforestation.
Okay.
So
Okay.
so means like I want to highlight that palm oil is not the problem. Problem is deforestation. So in our campaign in Amazon, we are campaigning against soybean plantations, animal agriculture for deforestation. And then in this region, we are pushing for stopping deforestation for plantation for this palm oil. Reason is because um all these single monocrops are driven by the big corporations. They just want to maximize their profit and then they just chow. So we
Yeah.
want to if the regions, every region have their deforestation issue. So the moments we want our call is to stop deforestation. No matter it's not about boycotting palm oil, boycotting soybean. So it's about stopping deforestation.
So what's happening with the there's I actually haven't kept up with this, but the compliance about palm oil companies with sustainability. There are like roundtable, or there are all these things. What is the status of that? Are people doing, are they complying to these things? Are they do they make a difference?
Okay. Again, I want to highlight that palm oil is not the problem. Problem is deforestation. Palm oil is not the problem, but the palm oil industry still have a lot of the bad apple in their own industry. Reason
Okay.
is they have a policy called no NTPE, no deforestation, no peat, no exploitations policy in their company, especially the global trader, the palm oil manufacturer, all this, they have a policy known as NTP. The thing is that not all the company or supply chain are enforcing, are walking the talk. And this happen also giving a bad name to the whole palm oil industry. So what we need to do is like the palm oil industry, responsible palm oil trader, they must take a stand and keep a distance with those palm oil, the bad palm oil grower. So meaning that, for example, no doubt that we have thousands of, businesses, in the same industry. So the way to do it is to keep a distance. We need to push for responsible business. The moment we have more responsible business join the coalitions together, then we can put the bad apple under the spotlight. This also can provide a good name to the company, the plantation company. They are making good progress. I take one example. Um, Palm oil can be grown without trashing rainforest. One of the example is now we are also working with the smallholder palm oil grower in Sumatra and in Dosan, Sumatra, and also Sendagau in West Kalimantan, with the local farmer, the palm oil farmer, to show that protecting remaining forests and also growing palm oil can go hand on hand without trashing, without destroying the remaining rainforest. And this shows that growing economy and also without trashing rainforest is actually it works. This also
But
can only
how does the end customer know that that's happening? I mean, that was my question, because they have to subscribe to some kind of better practice kind of certification, right? And is that working? This kind of certification?
That's the tricky part because the roundtable sustainable palm oil, there are some of the bad apple are also the member. So the moment you can see if you subscribe follow the news of the roundtable sustainable palm oil, sometimes we can find that some of their founder are also violating the policy, which means roundtable sustainable palm oil actually is a certifications body. It's something like like our CGU, like you sometimes we get A doesn't mean that we really do well in our study. But this at least it's a compliance. It's still good to have to get the certificate. However, the way to do it, we still have to show the best practices. The best practices that we want to prove is there's a one charter called Palm Oil Innovation Group. Palm Oil Innovation Group under RSPO. We need more businesses to move beyond that RSPO. So the certifications, it takes some process. So I take example, some of the famous traders such as Ferrero, Danone, and also Musimas, the company, they're also making some commitment. But we need more company to clean up the supply chain. The moment we have clean up the supply chain, then it'll be easier to do it. Then how do we do it? The message is simple, which is the policy, NTP policy. A lot of the big company, banker, palm oil trader, grower, the smallholder, they have this policy. As long as we need them to commit, as long as they
Mm,
have implement the NTP policy, then they can solve lots of problems.
mm. Yeah, I mean, my issue with all of this is it's still very vague for a customer. You know what I mean? I mean, and I look at that issue because I'm old, and I remember what cooking oil was when I was a kid, and it is nothing like what cooking oil is like in the supermarket now. You know,
Mm,
if you go to the supermarket now, the cooking oil section is almost all vegetable oil, which is technically palm oil, or maybe a blended palm oil. Whereas when I was a kid, it was actually much more diverse. We had ground peanut oil. We had coconut oil. We
yeah.
had ghee. So there's still there's a demand issue in the sense that sort of this global capitalistic market is driving it's as if the customer has no choice. I mean, they literally have no choice. I cannot buy groundnut oil in Malaysia. It's very hard to find it
And also maybe expensive.
and expensive. Yeah, yeah. So I can't even practice diversity. Actually, I can't even get it. That's my main problem. I have to go to Singapore to buy from NSK groundnut oil. You know,
Mm.
what is expensive is ghee is expensive. So we also see that shifting. So when I was a kid, I would eat more things cooked with ghee. You buy your roti canai, the dal would be made with ghee, whereas now it's definitely all vegetable oil. So,
mm,
there is definitely a lack of diversity in that. And I think that is something that the end the end customer also needs to understand, because right now when they go to supermarket, the story is not told to them, you know, and the certification is kind of meaningless to them as well. It's
mm,
not clear what is actually doing, you know, because the in my lane, I'm trying to teach the customer that their choice can make a difference.
yep.
It's analogous to like organic. There's actually like no local body that is actually large and credible enough. So a lot of companies go get Australian certification, you know, and then when they do that, it's hard. They're not so strict because they maybe just do a check once a year or something like that, and then a
Yep.
lot of the stuff is subcontracted. So
Yep.
maybe they'll go to the farm that is practicing it, but then all the sub farms are sort of sneaking in goods into underneath that thing. So it's not a particularly effective. Not like say in the States, if it's got an organic label, you can trust it a lot more. Do you know what I mean? So even though you're paying more for it, you can trust that it's more meaningful.
You're right.
So
You're right. So just to add on, if you look for like certified sustainable palm oil, we
yeah,
can look I think in Singapore there's a consumer goods also some and campaigning groups called PM Haze, People Movement to Stop Haze. They also
yeah, yeah,
list
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah,
product, which company, which brand are using certified sustainable palm oil. Whereas in Malaysia, there are also some groups. I mean, we wanted to follow this kind of step. And however, we also found that some of the major Malaysian company, they're rather to get, because of the global demands, the price, they're rather to give up. Sometimes they rather to give up the certificate of RSPO, and then they want to
mm,
only on other company. I mean the bigger markets such as China and India. For example, some I think some region like Europe they will follow they are quite strict with the sustainability
sure,
efforts, and company they say, okay, I don't want to follow the standard of EU. I only want to focus on China and India because these two market is already big.
it's
If
huge.
they don't follow the sustainability efforts, but they can buy in a huge amount, then it still works for them. So because of that,
Yeah,
the market also decide
sure.
the sustainability. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's kind of problematic because it's not clear. It's
Mm,
not a there's a literacy issue with the general public. They don't really know it's a problem. And another analogy is, for example, like plastic. We'll move on to plastic next, but like plastic, it was a very abstract problem, about waste and recycling and all that kind of stuff. But now it's becoming much clearer to the end customer because you're starting to hear about microplastic. You're starting to understand, oh, it's affecting my health. It's entering my bloodstream. It's creating medical problems. So
mm,
now it's starting to shift. People are thinking about plastics in a slightly different way now. Even the even on a political level. I mean, like now you actually, if you go to a big supermarket, you can't even get a plastic bag now,
mm.
right? So so that is the shift that I don't think we've seen yet with the oil palm thing. But let's move on to plastic because that was another big area that you were working on. Was it like was it one of the first things you worked on, or was it like the second thing you worked on?
I would say that if we are leading the campaign, I started to work on this imported plastic waste in
Imported,
2018.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
that Malaysia become one of the earliest country that received the plastic waste from foreign
Sure.
country, other country. If you remember, in 2018, there are many headline in international news saying that Malaysia turned to the world dumping ground because this happened because in many area in Malaysia, well, in Malaysia we accepted lots of the plastic waste from other country, and all these country are claim that they are the developed and also rich country, and the country that claim that they are protecting environment But the moments we receive this kind of the plastic, it shows that the hypocrisy of the Western the developed country. So that is a very interesting point because that time every week we receive lots of international media visits. They want to get their own plastic and pressure their own government because it means that it's a global scandal. It's not just environmental issue. It's a global waste trade problem that also involve waste mafia, according to the Interpol, according to
Mm,
the. That's why Interpol embassy they work closely with us to expose this global scandal.
mm. Yeah, because I'm actually writing some articles right now about microplastics because, actually triggered by someone asking me about it. And I just found one statistic is that 35% of microplastics is coming from clothing,
Mm,
from polyester. And that is analogous to the cooking oil thing.
mm,
People now wear so much polyester and that that's part of the problem. We're not wearing enough. We used to wear cotton. I mean, this is a region that grows cotton. We have quite a rich heritage, textile heritage, batik and songke, all these kind of things. But we've moved away from that to polyester fabrics because they're cheap. We're also told that they are performance when actually they're not. They don't really work that well in a tropical country. They're not really cooling. They're not really drying fast enough because our, it doesn't evaporate because we live in such humid conditions.
mm.
So that's another area that people are only just waking up to as well. That it's not just the plastic of our wrappers; it's actually the plastic in our clothing. You know
Yep.
which is kind of problematic. Is that something that Greenpeace are looking at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, because if you look at that, we the moment we tag campaigning against single-use plastic, we also campaigning like against to clean up the whole supply chain. And if you look at that, this is the single-use plastic problem to the global fast-moving consumers good company and fast fashion are the problem of overconsumptions. And
Sure.
then yeah, overconsumption. And also if you look at that, we compare with our I mean the previous our I mean ancestors time, or I mean great grandparents time, they our ancestors are very smart how to practice reuse and reduce all the waste. But our generations nowadays, maybe is we are influenced by the advertisement. We were told to spend more, buy more, use more to make our to make sure that this is a
Yeah.
good lifestyle. So do the questions that I want to ask, do we really need to spend more, buy more, use more, waste more to tell people that this is a good lifestyle? No, because the lifestyle is we want to demand. I mean, for me, good lifestyle is like clean water, clean air, clean environment. All these are the good
Sure.
lifestyle, and it's a luxury. And follow the trend of overconsumptions, I think promoted by capitalism, sometimes making us that we fall. I would say like we fall in the trap because I mean as a consumer, so we have to start to rethink what is what is
Yeah.
necessity and what is luxury and what is most important thing, especially during pandemic time. After COVID pandemic, can we imagine that after COVID pandemic, people starting to realize that some of the stuff are essential and some are non-essential.
Okay, that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I mean that kind of logic is something that we want to capitalize on because it it took that moment for us to kind of start to rethink. People find it very difficult to rethink. They just they're going down a path and they don't know how to stop and turn around or go left or go right until they're forced to, and then they're like, oh, maybe I don't have to go to the office to work for 5 days a week. That really changed things like that.
Mm,
But yeah, so that's interesting. I just want to jump back to the haze because there's one other thing that you were doing, which I just want to do a catch up on. I think sort of after your initial work with the haze, I remember you were doing a lot of work about the calculation of the haze. You were bringing like new machine, like new equipment to read? Because you were saying that the readings were not accurate. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I think just to recap on that, because if we to tackle transboundary haze,
Yeah.
there's also cause a lot of one of the reasons, the obstacle that why we cannot tackle the cross border or transboundary haze in Southeast Asia, because different country they are using different measurement. For
Sure.
example,
So that was a big problem, right? So
and
they were not calculating the smaller particles.
yeah,
So it was not registering as a big problem. So then so you were starting to, I mean, like I didn't know about this until I talked to you about it, and you were saying that we need different kinds of equipment to read it. So are we doing better with that? Is Malaysia doing better with this equipment about reading?
I would say it's like in Malaysia we have more than I think 48 stations to calculate the PM 2 point. Last time was 2 point PM 2 PM 10. Now it's upgraded to PM 2.5, which is much better.
Better. Okay.
However, we still it will be good that if the government, I mean Southeast Asian government can follow the standard by World Health Organizations. I mean the thing need to be improved because now the air pollution are increasingly become higher risk and increasingly important. I mean especially health issue become a health issue, and I would say the governments need to do more. But
So
usually government always say that they have a tight capacity, they have a budget issue, they cannot support more.
So we are reading at a better level now in Malaysia. Are we reading more accurately now in Malaysia?
I would say it's accurate. However, it still need a collaborations across the Southeast Asian country because
So
if
who is a problem? Because even if we do better, if Indonesia is not doing well, we're surrounded by Indonesia. So is Indonesian complying? Are they
this also go back to the ASEAN's levels, ASEAN's ways
okay?
of working. Because if you look at that now, Malaysia is ASEAN chair, and
Yeah.
ASEAN's different mechanism compared with EU. Because a lot of ASEAN follow a style. One of the main problem in ASEAN is they have a non-interference policy, which means Malaysia will not
Ah,
Indonesia government is doing. Indonesia will not interfere what Vietnam are
right, right,
doing. So because
right.
of that, they cannot act together. Instead, there
Yeah.
are diplomatic way to do it. But at the same time, the moment using diplomatic corporations to do it without legally binding actions, or this also become a bit hard. Yeah. So the way that we want to push is like here. That's why in our demand, the latest demands to the new environment minister, we want to hope that okay, because of the ASEAN's ways of working, non-interference policy, the proof, how do we prove that Malaysia can works better? The way to prove that Malaysia works better is like Malaysian government have to ensure Malaysian company to clean up their supply chain on not contributing forest fire in the region. So for forest fire in
Okay,
Southeast,
okay, yeah, yeah. So it's not about
yeah,
that's an issue. It's not just the country, but it's we are also players in Indonesia, right? There's
yeah,
Malaysian and Singapore companies that have palm oils. Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's very complex. All these things are very interconnected, and you know, so just to, for example, when I first came back in 2010, and I was like, oh, there's so many malls now, and all the malls are air conditioned, and in the air conditioned malls, people are wearing, they have to wear heavier clothes, so it's this weird interconnected problem with over urbanization, over consumption. They're all helping each other create even more complex problems. And I feel like also we don't really have enough content. We don't have enough information that keeps your basic everyday person more
mm,
aware of these things until it's a problem, until it's a big problem.
mm,
So, I mean, I see changes. For example, let's take the air quality thing. In the beginning, your only reading was your own ability to breathe. You know what I mean? That's all you could do, and maybe wait for a government thing to say something. And then 5 years later, there are now apps. We can now read an app. It's more specific. It's more local. So so technology is also improving that a little bit. Um, but okay, so let me move on to so you work with transboundary haze, you work with plastics. What other areas are you working in general?
I was now I also work closely with some of. I mean, I work with my team members who work on the climate energies and also the now we also have a campaign called Uma for Earth, which means we have a team, a colleague who also like want to connect the religions to environmentalisms.
Are you saying make them more aware of things? So from an information point of view, what do you mean?
I would say that it's more on like connecting environmental issue to our daily lifestyle because last time if we talk about protecting environment, people will only think that environmental group just only focus orangutan, protecting orangutan, tiger,
Sure,
elephant.
sure.
But
Yeah,
now the moment we talk about environmental problem, we talk about climate justice, we talk about human rights. Because
yeah,
why? Now protecting because like accessing to clean air, clean water, clean soil. I mean all this clean environment
yeah,
become luxury. I would say it's a luxury.
yeah.
I think example there was one conversations with my grandma. I think few years back um I asked her how do we get clean air. I mean, I asked last time asked a student in a school. They say how to get a clean air in school the student say switch on the aircon. I asked my grandma how
Yeah,
to
it's
get
kind of frightening. Yeah,
my grandma said just open the tingkap, just
yeah,
open buka tingkap,
yeah,
and ask how to get a clean water. Then my grandma say go to the river, take the water, and then the student in the city say okay, if you want to get clean water, we have to use water purifier, water
yeah,
filter. So that's a
yeah.
different understanding. So
Yeah,
what the
I want to talk about it a little bit because I feel that, that is one of the reasons I stick in my lane a little bit because sometimes I think when we care about environmental issues, it becomes an abstract. It's about wildlife and forests and things like that. And we're living in a very urbanized situation, and those are just abstract ideas. Someone who's just desperately trying to earn a living and put food on the table and send their kids to school. It's actually hard for them to actually uh, get to grips with the idea that we have to worry about the animals in the forest as well.
Mm,
So I do like to keep focused on the idea of urban stories, urbanization, how it's affecting us direct. For example, in an urban situation, there's air quality, there's green space, there's food resources. All these things are all interconnected with the environmental issue. You know, so I think that's and in a way, part of our job. We're still very low on the food chain of getting more people to understand all how these things are interconnected. So that is the content. That's also a content issue. There are no. We don't really have good content about it. I don't know. What do you think?
I would say like if put the climate justice as
Yeah,
the big umbrella, there's so many things we can talk about. Like
yeah,
even just take example, what is the crisis? The crisis, especially the COVID pandemic crisis. After the crisis, we can talk many things and link it to climate change.
sure,
For example, like food security. During the pandemic, when everything was locked down, then we know that okay, some of the food that we consume every day actually come from certain country, and we because of the lockdown, we cannot get the food,
we
we
couldn't
cannot
get
buy
it. Yeah, yeah,
but chicken, egg, and also vegetable. That is something that we have to discuss. People start to realizing that oh, they didn't know that the product, I mean the food that we are consuming, we actually came from other country, and because of
sure.
that, it costs food security. One example, I think when the drought season happened, the flood happens. Like I take example like the onion. I think most of the onion imported from India, and then that
India,
time,
yeah,
yeah, and when India imposed, I think the a certain ban, selective ban because of the food security issue that time from that time, and then Malaysia also having a food crisis. I mean the food security issue. They say like they might have a lack of the supply, the temporary shortage of
Yeah.
the ingredient. Then that
Yeah.
time the government say like, oh, it's time for us to grow. Not we need to grow our own food, and that is something that we have to discuss. And all these are related to climate change. And climate change again is about not just protecting about not just protecting about wildlife, it's about protecting human ourselves.
Sure, sure. I mean, the food thing is quite interesting because like you said, a lot of people, just didn't realize so much of their food is important. Like you just mentioned onions, right? Chilies is another one. There's most of our
Mm.
chilies are coming from India. Um, you cannot get like in Johor Bahru, nobody is selling coconut milk from coconuts grown in Johor. You know,
Yep.
even though I grew up seeing coconut trees in my environment because we used to be self sufficient in it. So now all our coconuts come from Batam in Indonesia. All the wet markets, all the coconut is coming from Indonesia. So things like that are not very apparent to your average person. And that is actually where that's our lane. You know, um, and let me talk about that for a minute because we struggle with communicating that because we can do it in a few ways. One way is actually we can do it directly, so we can teach kids, and we can talk to their parents. But the impact is actually quite small. We're not a big organization, and we don't find enough support from larger organizations. When I did the park, remember that was that was scaled up, and we were able to reach a much bigger audience because we had a Kazana willing to fund it and allow that message. And then the minute they disappeared, there's nobody. The next tier is not interested in it anymore. In fact, I struggle with this, just the level of understanding. Even for example, you came down to our this. I was so excited about it. They did a climate week event. Remember, you came down for that, and it was not that great, but it was still quite good. And then they followed it up, and it was terrible. It was just, they took that opportunity and they started to make it like a state government function thing. Did you come to the recent one, the
Yep. Yep.
second one? Well,
Yep.
so what's your opinion about how these ideas are communicated in a situation like that? Because that's a platform for corporations, NGOs, activists, to really understand more about the problems and maybe see what solutions are brewing. But I really didn't find it to be so productive. You know?
Mhm. Yeah. So to add on, to I think one of the elements that I think this is also linked it to activism is um how do we make the connections together is we need community organizing. Community organizing, I mean, from the grassroots, is the way to turn all these crises into opportunity. I understand what governments want to organize all these big global events, like involve all the policymaker, go to the conference room to talk about the policy, which is important. However, this can be only works if we connecting with the grassroots. We need to those get people from orang kampong, and then the community organizer who are already there, who are working on the ground to work together, and then policymakers have to provide more funding for them to sell so that they can sustain and also can organize the community in the long term. Because organize like one off, like one or 1 week activity policy meeting without more funding to supporting the community, it doesn't work. So the way to do it is we need to have a sustainable community organizing work
Yeah.
to do it. So this also link it to activism. Why activism work? Because activism always turn crisis into opportunity. For example, why people want to unite to oppose against maybe some big project, because they think that this is affecting their interest, affecting their livelihood. They are offering solution. For example, the moment this group of the community that act against this mega project, but they also promote solutions that okay, they want a better because they want a better life. That is the solutions that want to prove. That's why it is important to have a community organizing.
which is really hard because that's not very good here. You know, communities are not very engaged. First of all, they're not very literate about the problems. The problems are not very well understood or communicated. You know, the channels for communication are quite poor. It actually it's a struggle for someone to just understand the issues. You know, so there's a content issue. Then there's oh, you know, but it is kind of changing. Let me just let's just chart let's take a look at where Malaysia is now, and then we'll move. We'll finish with where are we going? You know, okay. So where are we now? For example, you know, one of the things that was very triggering for Malaysians and made them more, and it affected us. It affected politics. Was do you remember when the Linus thing was going on? That was a big thing that made people come out. It made people change their political decisions, and they
Mm.
pushed back, and the government was forced to think about it. Where are we now with that? What's the situation with
Okay.
Linus and rare earths and stuff like that?
I would say Linus now is a job political issue. Why? Because now, if you look at the recent news, every country talk about rare earth productions, rare earth technology. So looking back at the history, rare earth, why rare earth is important? Rare earth is important for to make EV car, the smartphone, gadgets, and
Right.
all.
Yeah, we actually need it more than ever. Yeah.
Most importantly, rare earth is also important to make weapons.
Ew.
So that's why Donald Trump went to Ukraine. He keeps saying that I want to help Ukraine, but in return, I want Ukraine to give me rare earth. Not
Yeah.
because Donald Trump want to protect environment,
Right. Right.
he want to make all these like gadgets or EV car. It's because he want it for military use.
Well, what's the situation with Linus? I have not really kept up. Like, where are we now with that problem? It seems to have disappeared. Like nobody talks about it. It doesn't seem to be resolved. What was the situation?
I would say that it's because now government allows this to operate it, continue to operate it with a select with additional conditions. Because if you look at that, Linus is the biggest rare earth refinery plant outside China, and who
Yeah.
is funding Linus? If you look at the reports, is Japanese government. Japanese government is also providing loans to them, and then Linus also signing the contract with I think US governments because against Linus is a tool. Also, they want to stop the monopoly from the Chinese based rare earth industry. If you talk about rare earth in Southeast Asia, Vietnam has also second highest rare earth reserve in the world,
Okay.
and in Myanmar now is having civil war, and who are funding the civil war in Myanmar is actually the rare earth industry. Is
Wow.
Chinese
Okay.
with the Chinese based I mean the pro from what I know, Chinese rare earth industry and also Australian based rare earth industry are funding the war in Myanmar.
Yeah.
Why? They want the mineral for, I mean, as
Yeah.
a tool. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I think maybe we should even say that we really need to keep our eye on this because we are only going to need ever more an increasing demand of rare earth as
Yeah.
cars become more computerized. You know, we're talking about more robotics. All this stuff is the demand for it is just increasing, right? It's not just in our phones anymore. It's going to
Yep.
be in more and more technology.
And also, we need to be very clear that rare earth, I mean, the raw material rare earth is not the problem. Problem is the waste management.
Right,
Problem is
right, right, right. Yeah,
how the company process it and deal with it.
sure.
So we need to monitor it. I still have to give a credit to the environmentalism, the activisms to pressure Linus in the past 10 years, and I would say that it's because of the people's power, because of people pressuring, monitoring Linus. Then Linus will only come up a plan with a proper SOP. But if you look at now, look at the history many years ago. Linus was granted 12 years tax free until now. And then Liners, main issue of liner is they're operating without having a permanent disposal facility, meaning that in simple message, the way it looks like, they are building a house without a toilet until now.
Right.
Yes, can you imagine like if your neighbor are building a house, they say like, okay, I want to build a house beside your house. That is fine.
Yeah.
But they are building a house without a toilet and they poop all the time.
Okay.
So that is a problem. So until now, the low level radioactive waste that being built in they're being dumped in the Kuantan, Kebing Kuantan now, they're still there. The problem is it's a high volume of low level radioactive waste, and the 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 how to say it's not easy to measure the impact of the radiations because the impact of radiation will only happen many years later.
So
And
this
when
is an ongoing problem. You're saying it's an unresolved ongoing problem. Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
so
Are we seeing more are we going to see more of these processing plants in Malaysia?
I would say yes. If you look at just a few days ago, Malaysian government just also start to explore that they will maybe plan to have another rare earth refinery plants with China.
Mm.
So it's not about Australian based rare earth, but it's
China
China's.
did. Right. Okay.
Yeah,
So that's something that we should peg. What about data centers?
data center is another things. I think mostly it's quite famous in Johor. If we look at that,
Yeah.
I think now a lot of the thing. The company claiming that we need data center is important. Okay, no doubt. The things that of data center is consume lots of power, electricity,
Yeah.
and also
Yeah.
consume some water. And
Yep.
I remember water commissions. Span mentions that um, if the data center, too many data center being built in Malaysia, it also might affect the food security. Why? Because you
Right.
will get lots of water for industry use, and the priority will be
Yeah, and
given.
just to explain the water thing, they need clean water as well. It cannot be just like pumped seawater. It's actually drinking water quality that they
Mm,
require, right? So it is a burden to our water system.
yep,
Yeah,
and you need water to cool down the center.
yeah.
Mm.
And I can see that it's like the new cash crop here. People are just talking about data centers like it's the new gold rush. People are just really converting land to data centers. They're also pairing it with agriculture. I'm actually hearing from some people about maybe growing things underneath, as a way to offset. And, so there are some, but again, I don't think there's enough content about it. We're not really hearing enough about how it's a problem, how it can be a solution. How can we reward the companies that are doing a good job about this? Because, the companies that are doing the right thing, for example, you know, uh, sort of folding in agricultural land underneath the data center so that it becomes net, it has a net effect. You know, we should give them, we should reward those companies.
I
Um,
think one of the key elements like for all these mega projects is we need an element of the free prior informed consents we call FPIC. um, Free prior informed consent is involve the participations of local committee, which means the moment you want to start a big project, local committee must be consulted and must be beneficial from this process. Because no matter how big project that you how much of advantage you claim that you will generate from this process, if the local committee they say no, they oppose it, then this is something that the government need to consider not to have it. Reason is all these local community, they are the frontliner. They should know what are the best for them. If someone say, okay, this project can create job opportunity, we want to ask how many job opportunity are benefiting to the local community, because some of the job opportunity are actually not for them. It's actually created by for other people.
Sure.
And that is the first thing. The second one is some of the money, the opportunity, economic opportunity are not given to the local. So the most
The
important
worker,
thing.
yeah, the worker, our wages are stagnant. Our wages are not increasing. The billionaires are getting richer, but the workers are not. Right. Yeah. So
That's why
that's
the
interesting.
ethic, the free prior informed consent.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. So let's just have Greenpeace. You were the first and only employee. How many people are working at Greenpeace now?
Now we have we're expanding our team. We have I think team in fundraisings and then HR and also some program teams. So now we have close to like 20 people.
Wow. So you like 15 years, right? No.
Mm.
In 10 years. In 10 years, that's been the growth. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Mm.
So what are the problems going forward? What are you now what is on your radar now about problems in this region that you are starting to starting to focus on?
There are so many problems. Okay, I would say like, yeah, I think good questions is many people ask like always call us for to complain about problem and ask us to offer immediate solution. I can tell them that we have no immediate solution
Right.
because these problems are caused by human greed. And I
Yeah.
have solutions for human greed. But to work on that, of course, the solution is to we have to work with the local community. Those who think that these are the problem, then we have to we have to work together, mobilize, organize them, and then provide our capacity building to see how can we add value in each campaign. So the way I can frame it in the different way. The first one is the forest. In forest campaign, now we are beside transboundary haze. We also working supporting the indigenous communities in Kelantan, supporting the
Okay, that's interesting. That is also something that we are also interested in is actually more content about the indigenous community because they're connected to the forest. If the indigenous community are actually the human face of the forest. So I think if you can relate to that, you can also understand the problems of the forest. So I think that's quite interesting. Yeah. Okay.
people. They are the forest guardian that knows
So
better than how to manage the forest. They've been known than all of us. So which means no matter what kind of development we need to start in the forest, there must be consulted. So protect forests. Protect indigenous people's right means also protect forests.
okay. All right. Well, anything else? Any other areas?
Others one is like climate energy. Climate and energy's work that I'm working with my colleagues now is the like promoting solar as a renewable
Okay,
energy
that's
source.
great. That's a great topic because I just want to talk about that a minute because I'm also personally moving away from negativity in environmentalism because it doesn't work. You know,
Mm,
30 years of scolding people hasn't changed behavior, you know.
mm,
But what I have seen in the last 5 to 10 years is when capitalism is working within environmentalism, it is a much bigger incentive for humans. So if we can turn it into a more positive messaging that, uh, demand this and we will, like solar is great. Electricity based on solar as well, like electric cars, things like that are also quite interesting. So I think there is, personally, this direction of moving into more positive messaging about, it's a bit like dog training. You shouldn't just yell at your dog and say no all the time. You should also say, do this instead, play with your ball or go sit on your bed or something like that.
mm.
And I think that is something that we are definitely much more conscious of now is like, what should people be doing instead? What are better options? What are better choices? What are better, I think that's, so you're seeing that energy is shifting, right? Uh,
Energy is
yeah,
big. And because if we look at the growing trend, the global trend is we all know that the fossil fuel are depleting, which means
sure.
like it or not, we have to speed up the process of energy revolutions to renewable
Yeah,
energy. So
yeah,
energy revolutions meaning that we need to promote more renewable energy like solar power, wind power, etc. Geothermal, etc.
yeah,
And these are much more better and sustainable. However, we shouldn't let the big corporation to control the narrative.
sure.
Why? Because I would say if we cannot do it properly, there are also some green oligarchs I would say that those who already exploited the environment, they also invest in solar energy, and then they only focus on profiting, but without benefiting to local community. One example is this. I want to make sure that we want to protect. I will say like solar farm is renewable energy, but if you destroy rainforest for solar farm, that is not right.
Right. Right.
Okay, so we want to keep it. We want to build a solar farm, solar rooftop in the existing land. For example, in the pedestrian roads, in the car park area.
Sure.
Or,
Yeah. 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 That requires political vision now. It's like, I mean, it's frustrating because we see that happening in Singapore. Singapore has that kind of vision. They're
yeah,
constant, you know, and we're
island.
we're only 8 miles away, and somehow we cannot seem to be unable to learn from them.
Mm.
Which is
It's also because Singapore is a small island. Because of small island, the governments, I mean, were forced to think how to utilize the existing land with limited resources, and yeah, to achieve more impact. Whereas in Malaysia, I would say that Malaysia is blessed with lots of natural resources, and because of that, then it's also we were told like this is maybe it's a resource curse. Then we have lots of natural resources. Then maybe we don't appreciate what we have, and we just exploit it and waste it. So the way we not need to do is like making sure the industry, especially, we also have a better waste management, because if we do not process the waste from the solar farm, that will also cause other problem in the future.
right. Okay, I think on that note, I think we can wrap up. So it was great catching up with you. The problems are as complex as ever. I mean, we're
We
still,
it me like they also cannot finish. Uh,
yeah. Okay, where are you communicating with the general public? Is it on your website mainly? Is that the best resource to find out what you guys are doing?
Oh yeah, it's still our website. I think Instagram, TikTok, and then yeah, website, Facebook, all this. We are still, yeah. If for those who want to know more about our activity, you can just go to our website and social media to
Okay.
know more. Mm,
Okay. All right, Heng.
yep. All right.
Good as always talking to you,
Yeah. Good.
and maybe we'll catch up again at another time.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.